I think we need to do, what's it first? Yeah, so here's the new thing that I now have to do before we do the SHTF news, because this is the sign of the times that we're in. So are we ready? Let me know what you think. This is what I've been spending my week on this week.
This Ultimate Live show has been approved for open-minded audiences and has been rated facts and opinions. Special caution for closed-minded, uneducated, or low IQ people. Adverse reactions can include crying, hitting the dislike button, unsubscribing, stupid comments, and other self-inflicted sufferings.
Oh dear. So yes, there we are. That's my new ratings little pre-segment, so that we can warn the Karens before we get into the SHTF news that it's just facts and opinions.
And now, the news. Stand by. In 3, 2, 1.
And here we are indeed with the news. And let's have a look and see what we've got going on today. Because like I say, it's a tricky one. Because there's so many things that I want to talk about, but it just wind me up. And I'll say a bunch of stuff that will mean that the channel won't be here tomorrow. So we're going to do what we usually do with the SHTF breaking live news today on the 18th of December 2021 with your host Andy, and we're going to be looking at the top stories, disaster maps with the earthquakes and volcanoes. We're checking into the space weather, see what the sun's up to, cyberspace, see what the internet's up to, and the hackers and ting, and then into some economics and some cryptos and other ting. So let's jump straight into top stories then, which is like super scary. Let's just crank the old tunes down a bit because that's well loud, isn't it? And let's jump into top stories. Well, not really top stories, but I thought we'll just have a little, just for a laugh, let's have a look on the old mainstream jobby. BBC News is always a good one. Look, the SHTF News logo up there next to the BBC News. It's obvious which logo's better in it. I think I win it. They've copied my colour scheme as well, look. So I'll tell you what I found was interesting about this, right, is I don't know those who know or those that don't, but when we start looking in a minute about what we got rocking on with, where are we? Is it here? The protests in London and stuff, right? And you see, there's nothing about it anywhere on this entire page, and I've specifically gone on here to the UK. Oh no, that's world, sorry, this is the UK one, look. And then I went on the UK one, just over butchers, and lo and behold, not a mention, like literally hundreds of thousands of people in London saying we ain't having none of it. But yeah, in terms of global stuff, there's a reasonable amount going on, but I'm going to bust through it like I do one by one with other things that I think is important that the mainstream isn't telling you about. Starting with some biometrics news here, and we'll come back round to the COVID / Omicron / nonsense after we get through this other stuff. So, South Korea launching facial recognition CCTV pilot to trace COVID cases. So you ask yourself the question, where does CCTV come in when it's talking about tracing COVID cases? And of course, this is all to do with the old biometrics, facial tracking and stuff like that, Face ID. And I've been following a few of these companies for several months now, and they're just rolling out every single day. There's a new contract being signed, another 800,000 at the edge of Seoul, yeah, that are talking about having 1.6 billion, yeah, like 1.3 million buckaroonies to roll out a load of more cameras, because like they haven't got enough of them at the moment. But of course, this has nothing to do with keeping people safe from crime or anything like that. This is which is about the only justifiable reason for cameras in it. This is specifically to trace COVID stuff. So you combine this along with the old trace and tracking app situation and GPS tracking, and obviously each of these CCTV cameras in turn are also tracked GPS. They know where they are. And of course, they know how long people are spending sitting next to each other, and that'll flag you up to say, right, matey boy, you need to come and turn yourself into the quarantine camp or else. So moving on, hundreds of millions worldwide become eligible for biometric passports. And again, this is ramping up. Ireland faces record demand. Demand from who? Who's demanding? Let me know in the chat. Are any of you demanding biometric passports? Let me know in the chat. Because apparently they're facing a record demand for them, yeah? Yeah, Zimbabwe launches chip-enabled passport amid public backlash. And again, I've got... This thing about this, you see, is that I think on the Ultimate Live Show, I'm going to be doing some individual SHTF live shows during the week, right? And I'm going to be doing specific topics for each one. So the idea was, I was actually thinking tonight I might just bang through some stuff because I've got an epic, and I mean epic, Omicron one to do, right? Although the data's being fudged every time I keep going back to the data, they keep fudging it. So I'm going to have to be quick on that. I've got a massive epic supply shortage shipping segment I'm going to do as a standalone SHTF news, and also a biometrics jobby as well with some other stuff that you're not supposed to know about it. So yeah, this is basically ramping up. Malawi as well. You know, they're basically all people who even had contracts in place before for doing regular passports are ditching those contracts in exchange for the biometric because they know what's coming down the pike. And if you're following the Ultimate Live Show channel with the SHTF news broadcast I'll be doing on there, you'll know what's coming down the pike as well. So, jostling for health passes. Again, this is all about jostling, isn't it? It's all about, like, running out and the demand and everything else. It's like, no one is. Airport processing times could reach 8 hours without interoperable health passes, yeah? And whose fault's that? Whose fault's that? Yeah? It's like you already have to test negative 1 million times and wear masks and everything else all at the same time, and you're still gonna, you know, faff around with people and, you know, and delay them going through the airport. And again, it's problem, reaction, solution, isn't it? You have to create the problem with the airports first and slow everything down because of policy, right? And then obviously people cry out for a different way of doing it so that it doesn't reach 8 hours, right? And they'll say, oh, it's all right, you know, we'll just need a centralised, there's the key word, we just need a centralised system. In this case, they're talking about a digital documentation of COVID certificates, DDCC. The fact that they've even got a what do you call it for it means that they obviously, this is a long-term plan, right? It's bad news. Anyway, moving on to shipping, we've got oil sheen reported offshore Southern California. Of course, there's like loads of ships out there. Is it 70 or 80 or something ships that have been told to anchor, or not even anchor because it's too deep, but they've told to anchor about 150 miles off the coast to keep out of sight, basically. They don't have to include them in the ships that are waiting at anchor. So that was the scam on that one. But yeah, apparently they've seen a big old sheen of oil leak maybe or something somewhere. But this looks like it's near the beach. Beach cleanup crews have been mobilised. That's never a good sound, is it? Yeah, look. Nah. That's about all we got there for the image. So, someone's leaking something. An oil sheen approximately 20 yards by 150 yards was spotted 2 nautical miles off our coast. So, yeah, that's pretty close, isn't it? So, it's definitely right in there. Poor old marine life, eh? And more on the shipping, we've got the Southern California's continuing empty container problem, and it's not just California, it's all the way around the world. It'll take me an hour to do a show just on that, and all the problems around the world with empty shipping containers, and all the problems as to why that's not going to go away and it's going to get worse. But it's too much to do in one SHTF news on a Saturday night, so we'll leave that for another time. But again, just to give you the heads up as to what I'm going to be talking about on the Ultimate Live Show channel with the future SHTF news reports. And I'm going to reformat the agenda on the SHTF news so that we have a dedicated section for biometrics, because that's just ramping up. We need a dedicated section for the shipping and shortages and supply chain issues, right? And things like that. So I'm going to break it up a bit differently as sort of segments, yeah? Because don't forget, when you watch this back as a cut-up segment, I also put all the chapters in so you can skip straight to different chapters of the SHTF news. But basically, we've got a major issue with the empty containers. And because there's no empty containers, they can't fill the empty ones up with more stuff to send it out. And they can't get the empty containers because the ships that would be waiting to pick up the empty containers are the ones that are sitting off the coast of California. And everywhere else. So once you... And funnily enough, it was more than a year ago I predicted everything that you're seeing now when I did that. Oh, and funnily enough, when I was putting together something for a dedicated Omicron segment I'm going to do in a future SHTF news, I was digging through some of my stuff I was doing last year with the coronavirus prediction tool, and when I was breaking the beans on what was really going on with COVID and everything, right? And I found a whole thing in there where I found all the slides of where I did about the JIT system, the just-in-time system, about how it would take about 18 months for it to ripple down until you see it on the shelves, and then it would take about 3 years for it to sort itself out because of the way that things get stuck in certain places and you can't get the things until you drop the other things off, but you can't drop the other things off until you first drop the other things off before you pick the other things up. And this is exactly what is happening now. Which is why the minute they started coming out talking about it being because of a shortage of drivers, I knew that was bullshit, because I'd already predicted this would happen a year and a half ago. And I got the dates on the slides when I did the whole thing about the JIT system saying this is what's going to happen. So, and it can't only be me that have predicted this a year and a half ago. It's not like government agencies are full of stupid people who don't know more than I do, right? So that's how you know it's not, how can I say? That's how you know it's not organic. That's how you know it's not an unforeseen event. Right, and anything that happens that is clearly not something that could be unforeseen, if I can forecast it, then anyone else whose job it is to do that would do that. So then why do these things still happen? Why do you still get into these situations? It's because it's all part of what's supposed to be happening. You need to destroy the economy, and you can't do that until you've destroyed everything that supports that economy first. Hence, when I show you a special news report on the new channel to do with shipping, and I'll show you what's actually happening to these empty containers, and they are making no effort, purposefully not making any effort to do anything about getting them to where they need to be. All they're talking about is storing them, long term, storing them in the location of the countries that they shouldn't be in. That doesn't sound like a long term, that doesn't sound like a short term, we need to sort this out plan. That sounds like we've got no intention of sending these empties back anytime soon. So why not? I just told you why not. So, moving on to talking about solar storms and their potential to create electronic chaos. I've talked about this loads of times. And by the way, the people that were asking me about the off-grid internet system that I've developed, which is it is an off-the-shelf type thing. It isn't an off-the-shelf type thing, but it's an open source type thing. Which is basically the ability to have searchable internet, things like Wikipedia, 6.8 million articles on that with all the illustrations. It's all searchable on a small Raspberry Pi device, yeah, that acts as a wireless router. And you connect to it, and it's like connecting to the internet, and you've got the Gutenberg project with 60,000 books and stuff like that. So in the next week or two, I'm going to get that up and running so that people can put in their orders with me if they want one, and I'll figure out in a show separately how much it will be as the minimum I can sort of get away with to make it cover the shipping and the cost of the SD card and stuff like that. So I'll figure that out for you next week. I've had a lot of people showing interest in it, so I did say I'd offer it to either the Patreon VIP members first, patreon.com/Andology for those that want to watch the exclusive videos. So this is just a report here talking about solar storms potential create long-term electronic crisis. Like I said, I've talked about this a lot of times, solar flare stuff. It's something that I've studied at length, and I follow the sun, and we'll get into the space weather shortly. But one of the reasons I think we're seeing more of these stories coming out now is that I did mention, like last year actually, or maybe more than that ago, that between like now is about the time where they're expecting the next Carrington level event is most likely time, right? And the sun is starting to ramp up. And of course, you know, it's not about the sun, just to remind people, the sun wouldn't take out our individual electronic devices because it's a electromagnetic wave, or an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. It's actually more of a wave, and it's these long lines here that wave resonates with, and the energy gets picked up in these long lines, and these big transformers here is basically what explodes, right? These go pop. And as you can see, the size of these things, they're the size of a like 3-story house. So these aren't things that you have on the shelf that you can just buy another one of. These have to be hand built, and they have to be hand wound if there's no power to be able to manufacture them, right? So if you have too many of these get taken out, there won't be enough power to run the factories to make new ones, right? And then you have to make them by hand, and you just ain't doing it, which is why a grid down scenario from a solar flare taking too many of these transformers out will result in us going back to the Bronze Age, because it will take too much to get it all back again. Yeah? It's a little bit like what I was talking about with the just-in-time system with the shipping. Yeah? It's the same problem, is that you can't just, it doesn't take the same amount of time to stall as it takes to restart. It's just not how it works. Yeah? because you have lost technologies. Like here, if all the transformers exploded around the, not all of them around the world, but let's just say 3/4 of them did, right? And if these happen to be in the places where they manufacture components that are critical for making the transformers, then how are you going to make new transformers to replace the old ones? You haven't got any power running your factory. Yeah, you wouldn't have the energy to be smelting iron and shit like that, believe me, right? You wouldn't have any power running the gas station fuel pumps to even pump the fuel into your gas tank to even get there, right? So you've got logistics problems of people even getting there. You'll have no communications because a solar flare is going to take the satellites out. So say goodbye to all your communications. You're not going to be calling up your workmates, yeah, saying, oh yeah, we need to build a new transformer. All right, get the team together. How? Knocking on their doors? Right? Because there'll be no phone. So even organising people back together to go back to the factory when shit's hitting the fan and it's Mad Max out there because the power's been out for a month, right? I mean, I'd have to do a whole show dedicated just to describe the cascade effect, which is exactly what flashed through my mind a year and a half ago when I saw this happening with things like the just-in-time supply chain system. It's the same problem. You can't just start it back up again. Ships get stuck in places, they run out of fuel, the staff get ill or they get malnourished because they're stuck on board for 3 months at a time, right? And then you have problems with the staff not wanting to go on a ship anymore because they've been stuck on the ship for 2 months when they were only supposed to be on there for 3 weeks, and they start thinking, are you going to make us stuck on the ship again for 2 months? 150 miles off the coast where we can't even get any cell phone, 4G data, radio, TV signal, nothing. Right? So you have a cascade effect, and these are called black swan events because there's a bunch of unforeseen circumstances that take place. Well, they're not unforeseen because I foresaw them and I did a whole thing about it last year. That's what's so annoying. So it's not an accident. That's all I want to say. It's not a fucking accident, right? Because if silly me can figure it all out, I'm sure there's people whose job it is who they're paid a lot more than what I was ever being paid, yeah, to figure this shit out. Anyway. Even refers here, look, Carrington event. Most powerful solar flare ever observed, blah, 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 1859. And again, that was one of the questions on our Truth or Trivia quiz a couple of weeks ago. So, like I say, the problem is getting it back started up again when, you know, but it won't affect your individual devices because it's a long wave, it's a low frequency energy wave, so it gets picked up in long lines. Yeah, like the resonant frequency of a tuning fork, yeah? But it won't affect your individual devices, but it will because you won't have the main power to charge them up again. And with the main grid down, your data centers and your server centers and your internet providers are all going to go right, one by one. As their backup fuel generators, one by one, run out of fuel, right? It'll just be a cascade of failure. And society will break down way before the last power gets turned off. Moving on. Mosquito locust swarm, do you know, it kind of reminds me of last year, right? Do you remember last year when we had the memes? I'll have to try and dig them out. And there was one that went on about, it was like death hornets, and then it was an asteroid, and then it was, you know, GMO mosquitoes released. There was like this just list of disaster stuff, and then people started making memes about what was coming next, right? So yeah, mosquito locust swarms predicted to descend on Aussie states. This is Australia this time. And of course, you know, when we've already had stuff like, you know, flooding and weather events taking out crops and things like that, locusts are a great way of taking out the rest of what's left. So, we don't want to see too much of that. So heads up to Australia, eastern states. I mean, it's a prediction. It's not a guarantee and it hasn't happened yet because it's just saying it's an ideal environment has been created because of the weather patterns recently, right? So yeah, Putin defies Biden. How defiant of him. Defies Biden. Who's Biden think he is? Sends more Russian troops to Ukraine border. Hold my beer. And there they are. What's that there? That's funny looking. So Russia is reportedly... So that's always interesting when it starts with that. Reportedly sending even more troops to its border with Ukraine. Even after President Joe Biden warned Russian President Vladimir Putin that the US would punish Russia and increase defensive assistance to Ukraine. So here we go, the old tit for tat. And like I said before, I do wonder if this is because we're leading up to the time when they start ramping up fear-mongering with the war business so that they can get a bigger budget when it comes around to setting a budget next year for the military. That's usually what happens. But there's some other things going on in the background, which do add a few things up, but this isn't where I think it's going to start. A lot of people think it's going to start in Ukraine and it will... Nah, I don't think that's the case. I do think that's the case. I think it's a good distraction, and I think, you know, with what I've seen rolling out everywhere, it's all a stage anyway. Let's just say that. So, Super Typhoon Rai hits the Philippines, leaving a trail of destruction, and destruction trail indeed it has left. It's pretty bad. So, known locally as Odette, we call it Rai, and this is it spinning around the sky. And it's a pretty... It's an epic monster. I mean, it says it's the biggest in history, I think, or something like that. But check it out. Here's a video here showing the let's mute it. Showing some of the scenes look absolutely epic. Look at that. Typhoon. So as I've mentioned before, Magic Hand and I used to live in Thailand, and we had lots of tropical storms, and there was one that came with a storm surge, and we lived on a little island, and literally the whole island looked just like this. It was nasty. And it took so many months to get back up and running. And it's the things that you don't consider, you see. If you've not lived in a situation like this, it's the hidden dangers. It's like even just walking around, and it's like you see, you know, you talk about sheens of oil floating on the water. You see that down the road, and you can just smell nasty smells. And if you've got any cut on your feet, there's no avoiding it. You know, you're going to get septic stuff going on. You got things like your... we had our well in the garden was contaminated because the water level rose above the well. Yeah, because it's all... Everyone has their own well in Thailand, basically. At least where we lived, they did. So yeah, it's going to make landfall again, and it's I think it was the biggest ever to hit landfall. 215 kilometers an hour gusts, 215 kilometers an hour, it's about 130 mile an hour winds. So very few structures are going to survive that at all, as you just saw from that footage. So bad news. Let's hope there's not any more people injured than needs to be in that, because it's just the floods, it's the disease that sets in afterwards with the sanitation issues and the homelessness, and again, crops being wiped out, logistical infrastructure being severed with bridges being collapsed. It's just such a cascade of failure. The SHTF scenario in that is just, it's massive to unpack, right? It's so nasty, so don't underestimate the power of typhoons snatching people's everything from them. So explosive activity resumes at Etna. So interestingly, we're seeing a bit of a reduction in activity coming from LaPalma, but we are seeing a bit of an increase with stuff going on at Etna, and the other one I mentioned the other day, Davidoff I think it was, which is a stratovolcano like the one in Yellowstone is, and Etna, this one is also I don't know if it mentions that actually, if it's but it's basically like a massive caldera underneath, so it's bad news. It's a earth-ending type capable volcano, so they're worth keeping your eye on. And that's just sparked back up again, and you can see some amateur footage here sent in. I say amateur footage, I think this is some official stuff actually coming out. Look, so yeah, that started bubbling up. And Etna causes a lot of problems in Europe for things like aviation. Of course, since they had that situation flying over, was it Siberia or whatever? Volcano, and it took a 747 down. And then there was one a year before that where a 777, I think it was, 767. All 4 engines cut out as a result of the volcanic ash. So yeah, they've had to be really cautious around eruptions now with aviation. But no one's flying really anywhere at the moment anyway, so that's less of an ish. And again, those following the Ultimate Live Show channel, youtube.com/The Ultimate Live Show, I did do this video here, the tsunami and Indonesia earthquake warning, that video. Of course, these weekly live streams on the SHTF dedicated news are only on the Ultimate Live Show channel, don't forget. youtube.com/The Ultimate Live Show, or just ultimateliveshow.com. But if you want to know more about that on there, then of course that was where I talked in depth about the 7.3 earthquake and tsunami warning as it happened. real time. So I just wanted to report back on that just to give you an update. And again, 7 people injured, 346 homes damaged. I'm very surprised it wasn't more than that. I'm not seeing any reports of any losses of life, which is great. So unless I'm mistaken, but you know, you're talking what, 2,000 people had reported feeling it, and it was pretty bad. We did see quite a lot of destruction in some buildings. So yeah, it's nice to see that's all settled down now, but it's not to say that the earthquake's completely gone. We'll be getting into that in a minute. This is just part of the top stories, really. We've got some heavy snowfall wreaking havoc in Serbia, leaving tens of thousands without power. And again, the reason I'm telling you about this is I think it's important moving into the sort of wintry season that we are in the West, and in North America and stuff particularly. You know, you need to be prepared for the possibility of no power. And I think at winter time, it's one of the biggest threats of anything. Yeah, you're not worried about wildfires so much in the winter. You're not worried about, you know, other things so much in the winter. But ice bringing down power lines, you know, infrastructure being destroyed by things being cut off and maintenance not being able to be carried out. At the same time as a time where you need the power the most because you need the fuel to keep warm. You know, you end up with a cascade of failure. And things just slow to a halt. So we're going to expect to see more of this ongoing, and that's, don't forget, this is on top of all the disruptions we've already seen with all of the stuff and problems we've got going on with logistics and shipping, and you know, it's not getting easier. So next up on the list, let's have a look. Where do I even start with that? Let's have a look. What do I want? This one. Just wanted to show you a few scenes from London protests today. Let's use the desktop audio. So there's a fair old couple of people, a couple of 100,000 people they reckon, which doesn't surprise me when you look at the levels of unity amongst people who aren't into the mandates at all, and rightfully so. There's nothing legal about them at all. Here we go. This is some drone footage here, or I think they're on a skyscraper. Just look at the scale of it. Look at them all piling around there, look. All the way around here, all the way up there. I mean, these are about 50 people deep or something like that, wide. Yeah, 30 people wide, I'd say. So that is epic. And this is just people on the way there. Yeah, when you start seeing the people that are already there. You can see the cops getting in there, intermingling amongst the crowds. Obviously there'll be the usual number of undercover cops in there as agitators, chucking the first stones as they usually do. That's been reported lots and lots of times. Typically these protests always end up being sort of peaceful. The sorts of people that are fighting for freedom are lovers, not fighters. I'm a lover, not a fighter, as Michael Jackson would say. People who fight for freedom, you see, are sort of like freedom-loving, don't want to interfere with other people's lives, don't want to do anyone any other harm sort of people, which is why they all look the way they look, and they all look sort of happy and smiley and calm and happy, right? However, people that are always protesting to stop people being able to do stuff, or to legislate people to not be able to do stuff, or to make new laws to stop people being able to do stuff, if you notice, those people's protests is where they get violent and angry. And I think that's the link. It's because these sorts of people are fighting for freedom. So these are people who don't want other people to have to do stuff that they don't want to have to do. Right? The sorts of people who are fighting to force people to have to do stuff they don't want to have to do, that already shows their mindset, doesn't it? It already shows their aggression and their violence towards wanting to get involved in someone else's life. The whole point of the non-aggression principle, yeah, is to just, you know, live your own life and don't do anyone else any other harm. And so that would include not forcing someone to do something they don't want to have to do or shouldn't have to do, right? So, yeah, it gives you a good idea, the sort of sentiment around the UK today. And you know, you can see, look at the scenes here. it's kind of nice to see, isn't it? And all the flags flying, all the diversity. Look, no one's got masks on. It's like equal male, female, the ones in between, every race I think that exists in that crowd. There's kids there with there's people there with their dogs and their handbags. Oh dear, right? So yeah, that's kind of what was looking, that was what was rocking on there. And then of course, matey boys get involved, and this is what happens. As soon as the matey boys come out, yeah, and of course this is what the mainstream will show everyone, isn't it? This is what the BBC will show everyone, just that. Yeah, it's classic. Here's a time-lapse look of everyone doing their thing, look, and again, all their signs and things, all happy faces. Doesn't look like there's any masks there at all, does it? I haven't seen one yet. Good on them. So yeah, they're out having a good time, showing what it's all about, and great way to spend a Saturday, innit? In London. What's this one here? Here's some more nighttime footage. There looks like they're all accumulated outside numero 10, number 10, and looks like you just got a line of militarized cops there. That's about it. Just sort of maybe one every 1 meter or something, but again, you know, you can tell by the crowd, these people aren't combative. Look, none of them have got helmets on. They're not all wearing black and all this kind of business, you know. They're not all wearing hoodies, even though it is cold as hell at the moment in the UK. So it's always an easy way to get an idea of what the crowd's looking like, as to see what they're fighting for, right? GB News, if those who didn't know yet, these are just shills, basically. They're paid opposition, yeah. So this is why when they're reporting on it, they're just showing a couple of people. Look, just 100 people. Yeah, just 100 people. You see, it's classic. But like I said, don't forget. A couple of people giving speeches there. Look. But what's interesting is that, like I say, when you check it out, right? Look, even on the UK tab of the BBC News, ain't not got nothing about nothing about nothing. Ain't not got nothing. They haven't got anything. Yeah? What are they going about? Time-lapse of long Eurostar queue before travel ban, right? Mayor declares major incident in London. Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the hundreds of thousands of people in London protesting mandates and lockdowns. Oh no, that's him talking about declaring an incident, which is an Omicron incident, which is a predicted maybe, going to be, should be, might be. Yeah? Even though when they get pressed on the matter, have you seen all the interviews where they get pressed on the matter? Say, well, how many people are actually in hospital? Oh, well, 9. Yeah, but how many people have actually died? Well, 1 with COVID. No, but how many have died of it? Well, none. But 1 with it. Yeah, but none of it. No. So basically, no one's died. There's only 9 people in hospital. And don't forget, anyone who's done a PCR test knows that you can't diagnose Omicron from a PCR test. I've got a whole show that I'll do dedicated to that, because it's all busted wide open, right? You have to do genome sequencing, which takes 7 days, and you can only do 70 per day. So how you start talking about people like John Hopkins, John, whatever his stupid name is, going on about Dr. John Campbell, going on about 250,000 cases right now. It's like, what? And then we're all going to die. I'm like, what? People have literally lost the plot, and I can't work out if these people are thick as pig shit, got like room temperature IQ, or whether they're just paid off. I haven't quite figured that out yet. But I'll tell you what, just as a little heads up, talking of the old when I was putting this other dedicated show together earlier in the week for the Ultimate Live show, I was looking back at some dates that I thought were interesting, and I was looking back at the event 201. And just to give you the heads up, the Truth or Trivia Red Pill quiz tonight, for those that are not familiar, it's basically Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but you don't win a million sheets. But it's all right, Red Pill questions and stuff. That'll be later on tonight. But I think there's an Event 201 question in that later on. But this is obviously where they talked about exactly what we've seen playing out. But it was October the 18th in 2019, right? So this is before COVID, but it was basically talking about what COVID was going to be. Right, And most of the time was spent talking about how they're going to handle the disinformation campaign, right? Communications discussion, right? The communications discussion is basically like more than an hour of them talking about how they're going to stop people finding out, what's going on. But it was interesting looking at the dates, because this was October I think it was October the 16th that the event 201 happened. I thought I had the page open, unfortunately. Maybe it's on here. October 18th, sorry. High-level pandemic exercise. So for those that don't know, this was a Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with World Economic Forum, Bill and Melinda Gates, all the usual suspects, right? They basically put this drill together on the 18th of October 2019, right? And it was about a coronavirus that takes over the world and, we all die and all the rest of it, right? And what they're going to do about it. And most of it, like I say, was talking about how they're going to deal with misinformation. I thought, if you're talking about a drill to do with a pandemic that may or may not come in the future, I don't think the first thing I'd be worried about is people not believing it and like sending information to their friends, showing them counter information, right? It just didn't seem like the sort of thing that would be the first thing that would come to my mind as what I'd be doing in a drill. But anyway, it was interesting when I saw this video and I considered the dates, because I believe this was the 29th of October 2019 when this one came out. This was interesting. Check it out.
Why don't we blow the system up? I mean, obviously we can't just turn off the spigot on the system we have and then say, hey, everyone in the world...
sorry, let me just replay that from the beginning.
We can't just turn off the spigot on the system we have and then say, hey, everyone in the world should get this new vaccine we haven't given to anyone yet. But there must be some way that we grow vaccines mostly in eggs, the way we did in 1947.
In order to make the transition
Here he is.
from getting out of the tried and true egg growing, which we know gives us results that can be beneficial. I mean, we've done well with that, to something that has to be much better. You have to prove that this works, and then you've got to go through all of the clinical trials, phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3, and then show that this particular product is going to be good over a period of years. That alone, if it works perfectly, is going to take a decade.
There might be a need.
So it might take a decade, basically, to roll out some new technology. They're talking about going from eggs to cells, which they did a while ago, but I'll talk about that in another video. But this dude is interesting, because you've got to remember, this is after the Event 201 meeting, drill, right? A couple of weeks later, matey boy here comes out going, here, hold my beer, I've got an idea.
Or even an urgent call for an entity of excitement out there that's completely disruptive, that's not beholden to bureaucratic strings and processes.
So we really do have a problem of how the world perceives influenza, and it's going to be very difficult to change that unless you do it from within and say, I don't care what your perception is, we're going to address the problem in a disruptive way and in an iterative way, because you do need both.
But it is not too crazy to think that an outbreak of a novel avian virus could occur in China somewhere. We could get the RNA sequence from that, beam it to a number of regional centers, if not local, if not even in your home at some point, and print those vaccines on a patch and self-administer.
And sure enough, here we are. 3 months after that, what happened? So yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence, is it? Nothing is a coincidence. So the dates on that were quite interesting. So this was just part of what I was looking at earlier on as part of my research. And I was putting together a couple of slides that I'm going to be using in an upcoming video, which is just going to be devastating, right? Check this out. Just for those that are worried about anything, don't be. I tried to illustrate this last year, if you remember, in about March. I think it was March the 17th last year. I was trying to explain to people about the grains of sand and the house. Yeah, in terms of the chances of you dying. So I spent today and yesterday to make 5,000 dots on it. There's basically 5,040, but there's basically 5,000 dots in it. I think there's 72 rows by 69 or something like that, right? But this is what 5,000 looks like. So when we talk about a survival rate of 99.92%, which is assuming you're less than 70 years old and you don't have any comorbidities, it's higher than that. So this is worst case scenario, 99.92% survival rate, which basically means that 0.08%, don't forget, yeah? Sorry, no, what am I talking about? Oh, that's good. I saw that because that's wrong. 99.98%, isn't it? Sorry. I bet everyone in the chat was going, what are you talking about? It's 99.98. All right. I fixed it. So, yeah, 99.98% survival rate. So that means it's basically 0.02%. So basically, you have to have 5,000 people that have actually got it and are ill with it before you get one person that will die of it. And this was because I was doing a 101 slide thing about herd immunity and the mathematical formula that you use to discern, or you can basically extrapolate what percentage of the population need to have immunity in order for it to complete an utterly devastate a virus that has got an R0 reproductive rate of X, right? So you give it a reproductive rate of X, and the mathematical formula will tell you what the herd immunity level needs to be in order for that to die out, right? And when you know the math on that, you'll know how stupid it is. You'll laugh at it. Anyway, watch this. This is 5,000, and this is the one little, can you see this little dot here? This little black dot. This is the one person that died, look. So this is all the people. So what I'm saying is that if you get COVID, right? If you contract it and you're infected with it, not asymptomatic, oh, I've had a positive test, 97% false positive rate and all that crap. I'm talking about actually got it, actually feeling ill with something that resembles the flu, right? You are now in this pool of 5,000 people. Not before, only if you've actually got it and you're actually ill. Now you're in the pool of people, yeah, of which 0.02% people die, right? Succumb. So what you have to ask yourself is, look at how many dots this is, right? And imagine yourself, right, in an average city centre packed out, or concert packed out with people, right, with 5,000 people around you. What you're saying is that you're that scared about your own immune system that you would be able to look around all those other 4,999 other people and think to yourself, yeah, do you know what? I think I'm probably the least healthy person here amongst these 5,000 people. I don't know about you, but I could stand in a crowd of 100 people. 100 people, 50 times less. I could stand in a crowd of 100 people and feel like there was no way I was anywhere near the least healthy person in that group of 100 to be the chance of dying. So ask yourself the question, if you do on a daily basis, if you were to, you know, bear in mind, this is assuming every single one of these people has got COVID, ill with it, in bed, sniffling, right? Symptomatic, right? One of these 5,000 people are not going to make it. So you got to ask yourself the question, realistically, in a group of 5,000 other people that are all feeling ill with it at the time, if you ever feel ill with it, what's the chances of it me being the one out of those 5,000 other ill people that are going to actually succumb to it? And if you can answer that question, well, you can answer all the other questions that come after it, can't you? So anyway, this is actually, like I say, it's part of a bigger thing that I haven't finished yet, but it was just while I was rocking around with it, it took me so long to do for 5,000 dots on there just to get the one that you would need that would die. Yeah. So I just thought it's an easy way of visualizing it. Like, you know, before I was talking about a 10 meter, 30 foot by 30 foot house. By 30 foot house is the equivalent of like 1 or 2 grains of sand in the cement out of the whole sand making up the whole house if it was full of sand, right? I don't know what people can visualize easy, you see, but anyway, it wasn't supposed to be a monster SHTF news. It's already turned into it. So let's get back to this. So that was that. So what we need to do now is jump back to the newsroom and then we'll get into the next subject. And then once I've tidied my windows up. So I hope everybody's okay in the chat because, you know, I just have to be absolutely going crazy absolutely crazy through the SHTF news. It's the only way I can do it. And I'll just have to deal with whatever the, people's views are or whatever. But like I say, it's just facts and opinions. I wouldn't tell you anything. Like I said, we've been here before, haven't we? When it first all was kicking off back in January, I think it was January the 22nd was the first time I was on a show as an expert guest talking about it last year. So January the 22nd on 2020. And then, of course, by January the 31st, I think it was, or something, I had the coronavirus prediction tool free of charge that I'd produced, that formula and the algorithm to predict based on the R0 numbers what the infection rate would be over time. And I've still got that, and I've made some additions to it, and I've updated it with the new Omicron numbers. And again, it's a joke. You just got to laugh at it. You literally laugh at it, right? So, and I really can't wait to get that rocking. So I've still got my coronavirus prediction tool because I made it, right? So it hasn't gone anywhere. So I'll be using that as well to show you some fascinating stuff that just, again, it makes what you see on the mainstream news, you just laugh at them like they're little children. They're like 5-year-olds talking about politics in a playground is how it seems. They've got no idea what science is all about. It's just incredible. It's like watching children. Anyway. So, but of course, the great thing about me is that I'm not a doctor. So, nothing I can say is medical advice. But the great thing about not being a doctor is it means that I'm not paid for by the pharmaceutical companies, am I? I'm just an engineer and a data scientist and a research scientist. And I'm a software engineer and a robotic engineer. I'm an engineer of so many different things. I'm a programmer in 12 different languages, so I can write as many algorithms as you want me to write. So the fact that I'm not a doctor puts me in a very good position because I'm not bought out by anyone. And the fact that I'm funded by you and no one else but you as the viewers means, again, I'm not beholden to any advertiser or product placement of anything. So I'll just tell you how it is, as I did. And way back in January last year, I was saying to people, if this is what we think it is, then it's going to be bad news and you need to hold on, hold tight and prepare. And by March the 17th, I was already telling people it's not what we thought. Somebody is lying to us. And sure enough, since then, everything has been coming out. And of course, it's been just an absolute, utter mass awakening around the world, of which, we were just looking at some of that on Twitter. And this is the reason why you're never going to see anything on the mainstream about any of this stuff. Yeah, because it's not free and impartial, is it? So this is why people flee to channels like this and others who don't have a dog in the fight, right? And you can just call it out as it is, and we've got time, because of the Patreon members and things like that. It means that I've got time to spend my time looking around in all this and spending hours and hours and hours writing these algorithms for people and that, right? And while other people don't have time to even look beyond what the TV shows them. That's the frustration. Anyway. It's not supposed to be a rant sesh, is it? Disaster maps. Let's have a look and see if there's anything going on around the world that might be threatening us other than the usual weather stories that I mentioned. So this is the disaster alert. And again, it's just talking about some winter storms at the top of the list and a couple of volcanic eruptions. That Sangay up there in Ecuador is popping off again, updated an hour ago. But I'll tell you what, the quakes have been shifting up and down a bit, and they have been getting more. We're sitting at about 45 to 50 quakes a day, which is about 20 more than normal. And just as I said on that other one, I did mention on the Ultimate Live Show channel, youtube.com/The Ultimate Live Show, brand new channel. But this one here with the tsunami and the Indonesia quake, I did mention on that one that if we do indeed see quakes around this region here, the Ring of Fire, they will basically emanate around and up the west coast, and sure enough, that's exactly what we saw happen around here. Look. And you can be quite certain if you get a quake that's deep enough and big enough, it will always ring around this Ring of Fire, like a ringing a bell. It will just go bub, 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 bub. That's easy to predict, but it's not always easy to predict what the time sequence is between as it rattles around. And then we saw this one in Japan, which doesn't seem to be there anymore, but that was a bit weird. It looked like it was going to start going round the other way. Usually goes round that way. So anyway, when you watch it long enough every day for years and years, you get an idea of the patterns that you're used to seeing. But in terms of the quakes, I'll just move on to the volcano situation in LaPalma, because of course that's important for anyone living on the east coast of the US, or us here in the UK and parts of Europe. But I will say, to let you, to put your mind at ease, it's actually dying down quite significantly. Now, the difference between the red and the yellow quakes are super small. These are like less than, between 1 and 2 magnitude, right? And even less than that with a slightly smaller circle, yellow jobs. So, yeah, I mean, I was a bit worried a few days ago here on the 17th, the 16th. I'm sure that was earlier than that. But you see this massive cluster here? This is the depth. This is as though we're looking from the side, if you cut a side slice. So we're going down as 40 kilometers. This is about 35 kilometers, this stack down here. So when I saw these all build up, you can see the trend before that, 13th, 14th, 15th, barely anything going on down there. And then suddenly, boom. And I was a bit worried that we were going to start seeing something else bubbling up from the bottom. But as it turns out, it looks like it's fizzling. And I really feel nervous saying to people it's fizzling because, again, it's just sod's law in it. You say something like that and the day after it goes boom, right? But I've been following this for quite a few, about the last 5 days. I've been checking in as well, particularly to see if it's going up or down. And I would say it's starting to ease. But we could see this other activity that I reported on earlier on with things like the Etna. We could see the seismic activity and the volcanization starting to move to other sides of the planet. Just to give you an idea, there was one of the Kilauea, one of the calderas, it emptied. It literally emptied about 3 months leading up to the Asian tsunami of 2004. That Kilauea caldera emptied 3 months before that, and it'd never done it before. So tell me that's a coincidence. And that thing's the other side of the fucking planet, literally the opposite side of the planet. Yeah, so a caldera emptied about 1 kilometer down of lava, and then the other side of the planet, about 3 months later, you had that Asian tsunami. So you tell me that's a coincidence. So moving on, not too much to worry about. Like I say, there is a lot of volcanization. The earthquakes are ticking up in different places, but things like LaPalma look like they're easing towards the right way. So let's move into the solar hand with the space weather then. And I'll tell you what, there's definitely a lot more going on with the space weather than there is the earthquakes. And look at this, look at the number of sunspots. It is littered, right? And the best way to check that out is you go here, you can see these are the numbered sunspots here, the 2906, the 2907 and so on, right? So you've got 6 active sunspot regions, right? What I like to do is hit the sunspot summary here, and it will take you to a page that looks like this. And what it will do is it'll give you a breakdown. You see this magnetic class. Don't forget what I told you week after week. If it's beta, it's okay. What we don't want to see is alpha, gamma, beta, delta, sorry. So beta, gamma, delta. At the moment, it's beta, gamma. But the last week, when this first was coming round the limb of the sun, for about 6 hours, this one and this one were saying beta, gamma, delta configuration. And when it becomes beta, gamma, delta is when we can expect some flare activity, right? So there's so many. We had none the other way, and now we've got 6 of them, right? And you can see here the beta gamma. We've got mixing going on here with the blue. You see, you've got the green area. You've got this one's a better one here. You can see this dark blue region. You've got the dark orange region there, and they're separated with this green in between them. So they're going to start mixing in. But you've got 2 separate parts of this yellow behind the blue. This is where we start seeing the mixing. If that establishes a red bit there, we'll be talking about a beta gamma delta. Now, what's interesting is these fuckers are on the way back round, look. So you see them here, 2909, 08, 07, all in a ring, right? In about, don't forget, 28 days to do 1 rotation of the sun. So what's that in terms of degrees? So about 10, 12 degrees or something per day. So if you imagine this 2909, those chappies want to be rotating around, yeah? Maybe about, 40 degrees to be earth facing. They need to be slightly across the other side of the limb to be earth facing. So over this week, is where we can expect to see some activity going on. So I'll make sure on the Ultimate Live Show channel, this one, I'll make sure if there's anything going on, I'll be doing the live SHTF news broadcast, of course, straight away. Keeping an eye, because you can see like this 2907, 2908, obviously they know it's going to be a problem, right? So other than that, there's nothing actually happening, but this could spell 25% chance of an M flare. And when we start seeing groupings like this popping up, this is why I felt it was sort of worth showing you the news story we had earlier talking about the solar storm threat with things like the grid down scenarios. It's one of people's worst fears because it is literally throwing mankind back to the Bronze Age, right? If a disaster doesn't really result in an epic level of failure or an epic level of disaster, then even if there's a slightly raised chance of it happening, you're not quite as bothered. But even if the chance is quite slim, but it's something that could mean sending mankind back to the Bronze Age, and Justin Trudeau, mankind is just short for humankind. We don't need to say people kind, right? So you would be sending humankind, or for short mankind, back to the Bronze Age. But worse than that, because people are going to be in such turmoil, and as I've mentioned on things like my rants I do on the, walk and talks I do for the Patreon VIP members, moaning about how nowadays no one's even got the skills left to survive with a grid down scenario like we had back in the day, right? And which is why I'm always doing the bushcraft videos and, trying to get people into wild camp and just even stuff like that to try and at least get used to getting your fucking toes dirty. Don't forget the meme we had the other week about where I can't wait for the bit where we're all sitting around a campfire with squirrels on sticks. Fucking amazing. So here we go. Yes, definitely something to keep my eye on for you guys this week. So anything that happens, I'll bring it to you straight away in terms of the space weather bidney going on. So in terms of the hacky stuff, what we got? Not a lot really. Pretty low, pretty slim. There's been a couple of exploits talked about and some coding on some server technology and some PHP PHP functions have been compromised. And there was another one where a JSON plugin on a few websites used was compromised. So they're talking about all this stuff in the mainstream, and it usually means they're preparing for some sort of a pre-prepared hack, which we've seen already with things like the World Economic Forum cyber polygon drills. And don't forget, World Economic Forum, same people who were responsible for being involved with the event Tour 1, obviously, that planned with the Bill and Melinda Gates and Johns Hopkins and all that, who back in October 2019 were talking about what would happen if coincidentally, a pandemic kicked off, and then 3 months later a pandemic kicked off, right? So the same group of Joes responsible for that, putting that on, were the same group of Joes putting together the cyber polygon, which is a pandemic, a virus drill, but not for a medical, viral virus, but an actual, grid going down and internet going down because hackers, right? Anyway, what are we doing? So not a lot going on there. It's actually looking pretty low. United Kingdom, as usual, top attack target, and United States, the top attack origin, as usual, followed by Austria. So Austria's sending a lot of attacks out, probably to their own government, the stuff they've got going down in Austria. So let's have a quick refresh of the Downdetector, see if anyone's got any problems today. It's not looking like it, is it? It's not a sea of red, that's for sure, so that's good to see. Let's make sure PayPal is working okay for those that are helping keep the show alive. Oh dear, right, what's next? Agenda? Economics. So let's have a quick brief butch and see what Guam in the crypto world and economic and ting. It looks like a sea of green, but don't be deceived. This is down at 46. It's still been dropping lower, but it has just very recently seen a slight, you can see it is a bit more of a sea of a red than a sea of a green. But you can see the trading volumes just completely dropped over the last few days. And I think this is what I was talking about. This is good as the weekends. You can see the weekend before, though, on the 11th. You don't see a drop-off like that just because it's the weekend. So this drop-off this is trading volume. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's volume chart, right? And you can see it's had a sudden drop-off. And this is recently. This is since that big crash down to 42. So there's definitely, but it's not to say that the entire market's moving, because it's the dominance is going down, as in there's money being pulled out of Bitcoin and being put into the other smaller crypto coins, but the overall 24-hour volume is still down 26%. So you know, we'll see what's going on. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the news at the moment about you know, the central bank digital currency. And again, I've got a video that's going to be all to do with biometrics, blockchain technology, how that integrates with each other, and how it makes use of new technology, not like people know exist. And when they do know what exists, there's going to be a whole load of dots that a whole load of people are going to connect all in one go. So I need to make sure that I put this video together effectively and efficiently, because you're only going to need to see it once and you're going to get it big time, and you're going to know what's going on around the world and what's been going on. You're going to know what the Great Reset is really all about, right? And it's to do with you and it's to do with me, yeah? There's no getting away from it. You're involved in it whether you like it or not. You either understand it or you don't. If you don't, you need to join me on the Ultimate Live Show where I'll be talking about it ad-free. So, that, my darlings, is about it for the old SH What Is Hitting the Fan news.